And now, it is my honor and privilege to bring back onto the line Kyle Ferroly. He was always intrigued that, and this is a quote that he attributes most of his career to, or his way of thinking that led him to his career, is the brain is the only organ that we don't look at before we treat it. And that's so true. Maybe, we'll talk a little bit about that and touch on that, but he's now made it his personal mission to teach the masses about this unique insight of why mental health is so important and how our brains react to stress. He's chosen to create this awareness globally to improve the quality of life for others, and he's made the ongoing commitment to always incorporate the latest techniques available. You can find his new book, which is coming very soon. It's titled Check Your Blind Spot, at his website, where you can find more about Kyle. It's kyleferroly.com, so go there and check out more about him. And Kyle, welcome back to 10 Minute Mindset.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be back another day here.
Yeah, I'm glad the Bears didn't eat you overnight.
Well, I'm flying into Colorado tonight. We'll have to see what happens, right?
In any case, let's talk a little bit. We talked yesterday a lot about the mind, and we talked about, the Bears, the metaphor, and those types of things. You said there were two other parts that you brought up in this whole equation, and that is the brain and the body. So maybe we can touch a little more on that today. What do you think?
I'd love to, yes. The famous quote that you had read is actually from Dr. Daniel Amen out in California. I can't take credit for saying something that genius. He is a medical doctor kind of telling everybody else in the field, like, hey, why aren't we looking at the brain? You look at your eyes, you look at your ears. If you break a bone, they take an x-ray. But when it comes to the brain, they guess off your symptoms. And his research has found 7 different patterns of anxiety and depression and 7 different patterns of ADD. Now, if you couple that together, a lot of people have some of both. You have a lot of combinations, and the meds only work for a few of them. So he's kind of the reason that I had gotten into the field. And while I don't do SPECT imaging like him, I do brain imaging using the EEG machine. And that reads brainwave activity. It does not look at the lobes or the structure. It just reads the communication of the brain. And it's really interesting because when you have somebody come in and you don't have them fill out a 17-page intake form, and you start telling them what they're about by looking at their brain, they call you a mind reader. And I say, no, just a brain reader. It's fascinating. I have a lot of help on my team from some of the best experts in the field. I don't want to claim to be the big chief that way. There are some people that have seen, over 1 million of these scans by, in the last 40, 50 years looking at them. And I'm very grateful to have studied with them. But the point of it is that your mind, again, to kind of recap from the first session, if people haven't heard it, your mind triggers your brain and your brain triggers your body. Well, your brain then triggers the signal of the fight or flight response to happen in your body. And once that happens, it sends a signal back to the brain, the body that is, saying, hey, we're good. We don't need to do anything really important right now. We're just being chased by a bear. We're in survival mode. So most of us, between, living stressful lives and looking at social media and wishing that our lives look like everybody else, faking it on Facebook, it just gets to the point where we're not able to really have a good reality check of what we need to be doing, how we should be doing it. And we start sending that signal to our body. Now, this is a really important, I wish I could shoot fireworks off so everyone gets this. You don't have to be in the stressful situation anymore to still have the physiological effect of stress happen to you. Meaning if you were in a war or you had something traumatic happen to you, just recalling the situation in your mind will throw your body into that. Look at somebody who has a phobia of something. They will lock up in fear, and there's no phobia right there, whether it's being in an elevator, being around a bug, being in public. I mean, some people have really locked up cognitive structure in their minds that is then triggering their brain and body to go into it. So I always wanted to, tell people that the book was written, 6 of the 7 parts of the blind spots are factual. I mean, you can't argue them. You can't, they're backed up with science. The last one is my bigger belief that there's something bigger than us. And I clearly state, with blinking lights. And I was trying to figure out, how could I get a battery pack and lights, glued into the book that says, hey, this is where it's the Kyle show, and the first 6 chapters are the psychophysiology show. Because I don't want to misrepresent when I'm showing all these facts to people. So where we are right now, though, is we're in the fact mode still. And that we have a perception, it triggers our brain, which triggers our body. You had asked me last time, what can people do? Well, they can work on their mind. The negative thinking, the unrealistic expectations, and the irrational beliefs are those 3 things that are disaster mode. But then we also can look at the brain using the EEG machine. Now, a quick preface without turning it into Kyle's soapbox, there are a lot of different kinds of brain maps out there. You don't want to get one where they're gluing channels together happening at different times. You want to record all 19 channels at once, like a medical grade EEG would. And then you can get connectivity and volume or amplitude of the sites, not just the volume of the sites. So it's very important to contact someone that does full EEG and QEEG analysis to make sure you're getting the right assessment. Otherwise, you might be going down the wrong rabbit hole when you start taping it all together. So that's one thing that people can do. They can look at their mind, they can work on that stuff. But if the stressor's already happened, and by the time you think it, it's already sent a signal to your body that is saying there's a problem here, the brain can actually be regulated using psychophysiology tools or psychophysiological fields of biofeedback, neurofeedback, and audiovisual entrainment. But you really want to have a roadmap of what the brain's doing before you just kind of throw something at it and guess. At least in my clinical opinion, I would prefer to see you do that. The body is more the biofeedback, and the neurofeedback is what we do for the brain. But again, without having a solid physiological assessment done on the brain, we're kind of stuck. So lastly, the third part of it is the body, and that would be a certain type of physiological assessment, we like to call it. Stress tests are what people think when you run on a treadmill with sensors on and they make you pant, right? We don't make anybody do that. We put them in a very comfy chair and we record things that show nervous system activity, like your skin conductance. When you're stressed, it goes up. Your hands are sweatier. Temperature of your hands. Hand temperature usually goes down when you're stressed. Respiration rate usually increases. The amount of CO2 and oxygen being exchanged also changes. And heart rate, of course, changes. So by somebody, coming in and saying that they're not stressed, they could be the best poker player until we put the leads on. And then we can show them, sorry, you're just really good at hiding it. Case in point, I had an ER doctor come in about a month ago. Really, really nice guy. And to me, I was like, wow, you really got your stuff together. But he was breathing three times faster than he should have been, and he wasn't sleeping. So, even professionals, including myself, we have to look at our mind, brain, and body. I'm not immune to this stuff. I use these tools myself, which I think is why I'm so passionate about it, is that I do want to let people know that, I don't just read stuff. I'm in the trenches still. I actually operate one of the offices that we have myself. And I find it very satisfactory to be in that mode and not just point people to it and say, well, good luck with it. Let me know how it goes. I'm too busy on being on a podcast. I roll my sleeves up, put the scrubs on, and do the EEGs and some of the assessments myself still.
That's interesting. And so based on those three things that you just described between yesterday and today, I'm going to ask you another question, because this is something that, since you're the expert in brain and mind and body and how they interact together, this is something that is super interesting to me, so I'm going to ask you this. In your estimation, in your professional opinion, from all that you've studied and researched and continue to do, where do you believe our thoughts come from?
Boy, the thoughts themselves, it's such a philosophical question. Are you talking about the thoughts that we have or the ones that we recall? Because the ones that we recall are coming from storage that we've already placed there.
And that's a good distinction, because, I've read research that says that we think on average between 60 and 70,000 thoughts per day, but we're only conscious of a handful of those thoughts, because is it our brain that sorts them? From our mind conceives them, and then our brain sorts them and presents us with the ones that it thinks are going to be valuable or important to us? Maybe is that how that works?
There's a really good talk on YouTube by one of the experts that I've learned from. His name's Jay Gunkelman. He's actually retiring this year after many, many years in the field. And I remember him talking about, I can't quote it right now because it's like 5 or 6 parts and it's really deep. But I believe there was a part in there of, you have to have the same stimuli happen within a certain time frame in order for it to be seen as, yep, that's something there. Because otherwise, we're not able to filter out. If we see a snapshot of a truck, coming at us, and we don't see it 2 or 3, 4, 5 more times, I think it's 1/10 of a second. But I don't want to be quoted for that. I wasn't ready to present research on it. But I remember how fascinating it was, because it's tying into what you're saying. And that if we don't have something happen quick enough, I think that's why commercials are so good at getting our attention. If you flash a white screen at somebody, there's 30 frames a second roughly in video, according to my video editor. I'm sure you know that too, 29 point whatever. If you flash one every so often, you won't see it because your brain's not going to register it. But if you're walking by somebody's house or, riding a bike or driving and you see this machine gun look happening inside of somebody's living room, you hope it's just the TV and not actually, what. But it's probably a commercial that is throwing those flashes of light to get us to realign and re-alert and orient to what that is. But then instead of showing us more, oh, it's a white screen, it's just a flash. Oh, that got me. Oh, what am I supposed to be looking at right now? As if you can't tell with the audio compression that they use and jack the volume way up during commercials, right? So I'm drawing from the old days when there were commercials. Right now you can just...
Still, I mean, when commercials come on, I mean, because we watch Netflix a lot and streaming videos, so we don't have to watch commercials. But when we do, the sound, you have to turn the volume down when the commercials come on. They have that... It's jacked up. I mean, it gets your attention. If you're in the kitchen and a commercial comes on, you can tell right away because of the volume.
Yeah.
It's just, it's amazing. But, so, like, your thoughts, to me, mindset is, how do you filter your own thoughts? You recognize them, you see them, and which thoughts do you attach emotion to? Because when you become emotional about a certain thought, that's when you'll take action on it. That's when it becomes a desire and it becomes powerful. So, the mind and the brain are two distinct things, but they work in tandem, right? So your thoughts, do they start in your mind and then go to your brain for you to recognize them? Is that how that, is there a pathway there, or is there?
Being young and you touch a hot stove, you shape a memory from experience and you store it. So there's such a fine line between this. I mean, I did a bachelor's program in pre-law and philosophy. So I should have a really good answer for you right now, but the counseling and the neuroscience, you just keep getting more narrow and more narrow as you go. And now I don't remember who the president is, but I remember about the brain and the mind today, right? So I think that if I kind of trip back real quick, no pressure, right? Time's ticking. I still believe that the mind is that mechanism that is very, very fluid. And I believe, yes, we try to say that we're logical, but we really just go off our emotion. That's why we're trying to maximize our health, happiness, and productivity and minimize all the junk, right? So anything that's going to bring us the happiness, and we get bribed by, like the commercials again, the red bow on top of the Lexus. It's right in my book as an example. Well, you feel a little sheepish if you don't buy your wife or husband or partner a red bowed Lexus at Christmas, right? Or you don't go on the vacation of those people that have bodies, but yet they look like they had kids. There's no way they had kids. They still have bodies. So there's so much of that unrealistic stuff out there. I get how they Photoshop the pictures, but how do they Photoshop the videos of these people? Enough of that. So I think that, all joking aside, that we store these things and then we go back to them and we do rationalize, everything with emotion. We try and justify it with logic afterwards, for sure.
Absolutely. Kyle, thank you so much for being here. I always learn so much when we talk. It's so much fun to get a little deeper and deeper with you and try to get you to go out on a limb, but I know the researcher in you wants to be super exact, and it's awesome.
Yeah, so, that was a good one. You got me.
Thank you so much for being here. Check Your Blind Spot is Kyle's book. It will be available very soon, so check that out at kyleferroly.com. Kyle, thanks so much. I appreciate you. I look forward to speaking with you again soon, my friend.
Thanks so much. I always enjoy our chats.
And I want to remind everyone to visit us, 10minutemindset.com, join the Facebook group, subscribe to the podcast, and we'll talk to you tomorrow on a brand new 10-Minute Mindset.